another episode of Hidden Stories Healed Now, where we provide hope to all of those that face challenges. Today, I am honored to welcome to our episode of this series of Teresa Wright Johnson. You know, as a parent, as a mom, there are certain times when we go through things we don't anticipate. And she's going to share her journey with you about her child, her daughter, and the challenges that she faced and where she is today. Teresa, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
I'd love for you to share your journey with the audience.
Well, my journey started with one of my daughters. I had a child, her name was Zaria, and I had problems having children. She was my third attempt to have a child, and she was born early. As a matter of fact, she was born, well, the labor part actually is where it began. She was born, they didn't know that she was coming out feet first, and unfortunately I was rushed into an emergency labor, and my daughter was born with multiple disabilities, including cerebral palsy and other cognitive disorders and disabilities. I was told she would never eat, walk, or talk, and pretty much that I needed to make sure that she got all these operations out. She would not be able to breathe on her own. This is where I first started learning how to advocate for my child. Zaria, she just was a wonderful little girl. Now, I had to be on bed rest for 6 months carrying Zaria because I had problems carrying children. And one of the things on bed rest that I learned was I watched a lot of TV, and I'm not a TV kind of girl. So I got her name Zaria from a TV show. I did not know the name Zaria was a derivative of a city in Africa called Zaire. And it meant one helped by God. And that's truly what she was, because she did eat, she did walk, she did talk, but I had to get a lot of intervention, a lot of training and support. I found a lot of support groups to help me with Zaria, other mothers that had children with special needs. But what I noticed the most is I was walking into rooms, learning and being trained to be a parent to a child with a disability, and I didn't see myself. I didn't see a lot of women of color in the room, just to be honest, and that's when I decided I was going to learn more to help my daughter, but to help more people as well, other parents, other mothers that look like me. I started meeting women, and we actually started a little support group in my living room, and we would go to other places, each other's living rooms, and it was called Special Treasures, because I believe my daughter Zaria was a special treasure. She was a gift given to me to help other people, but to make me a better me. Unfortunately, Zaria experienced a seizure when she was about 7 years old at school, and though she had an IEP, an individual education plan, because I was a supreme advocate by this point. I started learning about special needs when she was an infant because I wanted to make sure she had the best possibilities possible for herself. And they knew that she had seizures, but for some reason, this particular day, there was no nurse at the school. Her teacher was out of school. Her special education teacher was not there. And the assistant and whomever else didn't know she was having a seizure. Meanwhile, I had developed my life. It was all about being a mom to my daughter Zaria and other children at that time. And I had her in a school that was like, you know, it wasn't the school she was supposed to be in, but I advocated that that was quick for me to get to in case she ever had a seizure. Also at that time, I had an inclusive daycare helping other families so that I could make money and be available to Zaria. So I was at the library with my daycare and my workers, and I got a phone call, and they said, I had a different name then. They said, "Mom, Zaria is congested. Can you come pick her up?" And of course, I hopped in my minivan. We loaded the kids in the van, and I drive to the school. I get out of the minivan. I go to check her out. I write out my name, sign her out. I'm very active and always have been in every school my children go to. And I was walking down the hall, and someone said, "Zaria's mom? You know they took Zaria." "Took her where?" What do you mean? What did they take away? What I found out is that my daughter actually was not congested. She had a seizure at school, and by the time they called me, she was already experiencing that seizure severely. And when I got there, they let me know that by the time the EMT came, she was brain dead. And so they had literally just left out the parking lot before I pulled up. And you can imagine having a van full, 2 vans full of children and an assistant, having that on your mind and just walking back to your van and trying to figure all that out. So that's the beginning of my story of why I still continue to help families.
Wow. Wow. You know, I can only empathize. I can't imagine what it's like to have those feelings inside and what it's like to go through. Once you got those kids back to school, what was your next move? What did you do? How did you even think? Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine making the next step. What did you do?
I think just like as moms, a lot of times things happen and we're on autopilot, but this was like super autopilot because I'm still having to drive one of the vans. I have my assistant. Thank goodness we were an inclusive daycare, and my assistant at the time was my godmother that had worked within special needs all her life and really helped me ground. And I couldn't go to the hospital right then because I have all these other children, right? So I have to call my then husband and tell him. And that was very difficult because men deal with things differently. And so when I gave him a call, he was angered. He was upset because, number one, our child was taken out of the school. Nobody called us to tell her, hey, by the way, hey, she's going to the children's hospital. And so he was the one that went there, but the doctor called me. And the doctor was explaining to me that my daughter was brain dead. And I can't remember, but it was like, I was listening to it, but I was not truly absorbing it yet because there was so much going on. And so at that point, my husband got to the hospital and he figured out what was going on as well. Or my then husband got to the hospital and he figured out what was going on as well. And I just had a peace that came over me. I can't explain this peace, but it was a similar piece. My daughter Zaria had a seizure about 2 weeks before, and a peace came over me that day. And I remember saying to myself, if this is her time, I will be okay. So I feel like I was prepared some. Also wanted to say the day she had that seizure was the first day she had went back to school because she had been out of school for 2 or 3 weeks because we had her at the children's hospital getting all this testing and stuff. And at that time, I was going through a divorce. And my ex-husband said something told him to come and see her and put her on the bus. So I feel like that peace and that closure kind of really helped me.
Well, we're going to take a station break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about those dynamics, especially as you were going through a divorce and facing those emotions as well. We'll be right back.
Every story has a hidden element that is not often shared. Hidden Stories, Healed Now, with host Vicki Wright-Hamilton, seeks to share the hidden gems in real-life experiences. Our guests are ordinary people sharing their stories of overcoming insurmountable odds while providing hope and inspiration.
Welcome back. So Teresa, you were talking about you were going through a divorce. I can imagine facing this and going through a divorce at the same time. You know, in terms of making that work, how did you handle all of this stress and pressure, and what were some of the things that helped you get through as you were moving forward?
Definitely. I never even think back like that often, but now putting myself back in that space or place, number one, I am a big advocate of having a tribe. So I had a bunch of women in various support groups. I had a tribe of women in this one particular mom's group I was in. When my daughter passed away, they came with the meals. I mean, from all over the country. They were there to help and support me. That was great. But going through the divorce part was really hard, especially for my now ex-spouse, because people would think something like that might bring you back together. Unfortunately, I'm a victim of domestic violence. And so I had to get out of that situation regardless. But my ex-husband was very supportive and understanding somewhat, that our daughter, of course, was gone. It was very emotional for him because he couldn't be with me physically, but we're divorcing. But I really got through because I had great friends. Not only that, I had a 4-year-old daughter as well. So I had to tell her sister wasn't coming home. And that was immensely hard because she like, okay, mommy, okay. And so I had to keep explaining that. And her mom and dad are getting divorced. You can imagine how that affected her. So what helped really was support, prayer, faith, courage, and those sister girls that were coming with those dinners, they even helped me run the funeral. They went shopping. They said, Teresa, what do we need for your daughter? And then my family was there. They showed up for me and they supported me. And then just the strength for me, I believe I am blessed because God gave me this strength that I would be in a corner crying somewhere right now if I didn't have the strength and the faith that I have.
So talking to your younger daughter, talking to your 4-year-old at the time and having to continue to reiterate what was going on and the challenges that were there. And I'm sure that was emotional for her as well as for you. Was there any kind of help you were able to get for her too, or was it all just on you?
No, I'm a big advocate now, especially for mental health, because this whole journey has connected me to so many things. So even then, I got counseling for my then 4-year-old daughter because her sister passed away and mommy was going through a divorce. I even was able in her pre-K classes to go and talk to the guidance counselor, and they would pull her out of class. So she had counseling outside of the home, she had counseling in school, and then we also did things like church and open communication.
Oh, wow. Wow. So it's good that you went and got help, right? Because that's taboo. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about going to get help and moving forward in terms of making that happen. And to that point, I want to address something that you said a while ago when you said, I walked into a room and I didn't see anybody who looked like me. I didn't have anybody I could relate to that looked like me. And that gave you the energy to say, I have to change this. And I'm just, I'm in awe of you because to find the strength to say, I'm going to help somebody else that looks like me and go through that when you had your own trials and tribulations that you were going through to be able to help other women. How were you able to find these women when you began to get started to help them?
Wow, that's interesting too. Really, people just come to me and I come to them. I'm a connector. So I would see other women. They would see me at, let's say, building blocks or the library playtime. I was a stay-at-home mom, work at home, stay at home. I had a lot of flexibility. And women would see me and they were in awe of what I was doing, but it's because I learned from all those support groups for parents with children with special needs. So they started asking me questions. I was like, oh, I'm that person. I need to answer those questions. So that's where I found the strength. The other part where I found the strength was a discriminatory part where I was, dealing with doctors and different people, and they would put me in a box sometimes. I remember one saying at a particular hospital, when you leave and you walk back across the street to the hospital, I said, what makes you think I'm walking? Or one time, your boyfriend, why do I have a boyfriend? I said, I want to show another image because I know women of color are showing up way beyond that stereotype. So that's what made me be like that, most of all.
You know what? And you bring up some very valid points because, when you're put into a box and you're stereotyped in terms of who we are, what we stand for, the exposure that they've learned, that they have seen. It's also an education component, right? Mm-hmm. And you find yourself in that position trying to educate them so that you are accepted. Your child, what you're going through is accepted as you're continuing to move forward. And I just, all I can say is, thankful for people like you who are advocates, people who are out there to say, I'm going to change the world. I want to help others so that they're not feeling alone, through this process. So as you move forward, because of Zaria, and what celebrations do you do?
So one, I honor Zaria through a nonprofit that I created called Zaria Song. Zaria loved to dance and sing, and so it was no better way than to honor her. But also her sister Jade was still here. So I had to think about that sibling component of it. And so we honor her every day by running our nonprofit, helping families that have children with special needs. We also host a girls' camp every summer. We give away things during the holiday. And I talk to parents every day about special education plans, 504 plans. So I'm honoring her every day because I know I would not be the me if it wouldn't have been a her.
Praise God. That's the testimony of, turning a situation into being very positive and making a difference. And I can't thank you enough for making a difference in not only our community, but the world at large. Because it means a lot when you can find hope and you can find somewhere to go to get that support. We're going to take a station break, and when we come back, we're going to find out if anyone in the audience has a comment or a question for us. We'll be right back.
Every story has a hidden element that is not often shared. Hidden Stories, Healed Now, with host Vicki Wright-Hamilton, seeks to share the hidden gems in real-life experiences. Our guests are ordinary people sharing their stories of overcoming insurmountable odds while providing hope and inspiration.
Welcome back. So, as we talked about Zaria and talked about her being, the third pregnancy that you had, I'd love to understand your journey of getting to Zaria.
Wow. So I was a very young wife, mm-hmm. and we wanted to start a family. And the first child that I had, I was actually going into labor, and I did not know I was going into labor. And unfortunately, by the time I got to the hospital, number one, I was too early for that child to live. Their lungs weren't fully developed yet. It was a little boy. His name was Xavier, because I did name him. And he only lived for a few hours. And so that was my first experience, losing her first sibling, or my first child. A few years later, I was expecting another child, and healthcare is key in all that we do. And I was using the same practitioners, and I was told, you know what, you're going to need something called a cerclage because you have a weak cervix. They said, we're going to schedule that for 2 weeks. So luckily, it was this new doctor there. I loved her. And I said, okay. And we were going to schedule it. I went home. My then husband and I were watching a movie that night. I woke up. I was feeling very bad. I said, something's wrong. Called the doctor. They said, oh, you just have an irritated cervix or uterus or whatever. Just put your feet up. And it just continued to be painful. I called again. And they said something. I said, I don't care what you say. I'm going to meet you there at the office. When I got there, unfortunately, I had dilated too much. The child had the same problem as the last child because I had that cervix issue. And I ended up having this child as well, early, same amount of time. She lived for a few hours. and her name was Angel. What I want to say about that is healthcare is key. Since then, that particular practitioner is no longer in service or business, but he was providing services to a lot of people that had children that were miscarried or had cerebral palsy, et cetera, et cetera. So as a young mother, I did not know enough about maternal health to understand. By the time I had Zaria and Jade, I had invested in upgraded, specialized services for myself and my children.
You know, it is so important for us to understand not only the health care we get, but getting second opinions, third opinions, truly understanding the magnitude of their experiences, what they have done, so we can have the best care, right? Because it's really about, people understanding your body, understanding you, because we're all individuals, we all have different experiences, but people that understand what it really means and how to treat you, right? Who have had experiences, who can treat you the right way, or going to hospitals that are research hospitals so that they can look into things that may not be known, in terms of helping you. So you're right, healthcare is extremely important. And that's why our ability, especially as women, to find that doctor that we trust, that doctor that has experience, that doctor that has been with you, that, can really talk about your body and what's going on and the challenges that you may face. So let's see if we have a question from the audience.
Teresa, listening to your story was a lot. I lost a sibling growing up, and that has affected me to date. And I really want to know, how Jade is progressing and how she's affected daily, how she's coping, and what her life looks like now.
Thank you, and I'm sorry to hear about your loss because sometimes we forget about the siblings. Jade is progressing well. I know when she first lost her sister, if she saw someone being mean to a child with special needs, she would say, "Don't you understand they have a special need?" But she's progressing well, but she never forgets her sister. She still tells me stories about her at 4 and her sister at 7, how they snuck and watched Barney in the middle of the night. She always was very attached to her sister, but she has great empathy for people that have special needs, and she'll never forget her sister. She'll always remind me. As a matter of fact, she'll tell you that she has 3 siblings that are in heaven. She knows that she's not alone.
And what has she done to carry on her belief in special needs and all of that?
One, she's an advocate. She's a self-advocate for herself. She actually has her own website and everything. She speaks. She herself experiences, I'm sorry, I have to say it like this, I'm able to tell you, as she says, she experiences ADHD with behavior health challenges, but is a straight A student. And she just advocates and she understands that differences actually can make you stronger.
Now that's incredible, that she actually sees these differences to make her stronger, and how she can have an impact in education, especially when we begin to talk about that child is a little different than someone else. Wow, what a beautiful testimony of what she has done. Well, Teresa, I am so thankful that you joined us today, and I know that you have provided a lot of hope to others who are going through struggles and looking for answers. And I'm so glad you're able to live on Zaria's name, and that we can support Zaria in everything that you do as you're continuing to move forward, not to mention the other 2 children that you have not forgotten about. And I admire the fact that you're helping Jada to understand that. So I hope that you all have enjoyed this episode and have gotten some insights. Thank you for joining us again on Hidden Stories Healed Now. Remember, for every hidden story that you tell, you gain freedom and give hope to someone else. See you next time.